Welcome back to As a Man Thinketh 2019. I think we decided we are on day
5. We have decided, yes.
So thanks for joining us. If you're brand new, thanks for tuning in. This is a free program, and it's so far it's shaping up to be a great program, isn't it? We're really enjoying it. We covered some great stuff so far. And
thank you all for the just great comments and great insights and shares. It's all fantastic.
Yeah. And we're going to dig into the longest chapters today. We're going to look at effective thought on circumstance. Very juicy and very powerful. Not my favourite, not your favourite, but, a contender, I think.
It is a contender, right. Whereas, every chapter is our favourite, but yours is certainly
character. I think character's very important.
Mine, I think, is...
I know you don't think character's important. You think dreaming is important or something.
These silly guys. If any of you out there are looking for a new teaching partner, so am I.
Oh, you're such a kidder. The fun we have.
Go ahead.
Okay, so let's dive right into line 87 then on page 35.
Yeah.
A man's mind may be likened to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. Yeah. If no useful seeds are put into it, then an abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce their own kind. There's so many things we could comment on there. What stands out to you in that? Yeah,
I think there's a couple of things. Line 89, the word will, right? But whether cultivated or neglected, it must
definitely
and it
will.
It will, right? It's not luck and chance. It will. And then I think if you look on 90 and 91, the words, and he's got them italicized, the word put and fall. Right. There is, we talk about in we have a program called Designing Your Empowered Life where, it is, designing your empowered life. And God willing, in the next 365 days, your family is going to be surrounded by you and you'll be surrounded by your family and there'll be a cake with some candles and it'll be your birthday. And, you'll close your eyes, you'll make a wish and you'll blow out. And sadly, for a lot of people, that's the only time that they do kind of go inward and make a wish. And then they blow out their candle. But the idea of designing your life or having your life go by default. So, if no useful seeds are intentionally put into, and then an abundance of useless seeds will just kind of fall. And, you're left with whatever kind of falls in. And, I think what we're talking here is he talks about our mind being likened to a garden. I call this kind of, your mind is this fertile field of possibility. And, whatever is planted in there will grow.
Right.
And we've got to take responsibility. Later in the book, in the last chapter in Serenity, he'll talk about this idea of taking the helm of thought, right?
Right.
And being very intentional. But I think for me, it's
design or default.
It's design or default.
Interesting how he uses the word abundance there, isn't it? Useful seeds are put into it, then an abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein. So abundance is going to happen by default unless you do something about it.
I think so, and I think that there is, if we think about things that are intentional and specific, they're rarer and more precious, aren't they? Than kind of this kind of just abundant of just right scatteredness, right?
Yeah. I like the last couple of words of this paragraph, and will continue to produce their kind, because in Thought and Character we were talking about the plants and the seeds that come from the plants and continuing to just grow the same plants. So you don't suddenly get sunflowers from
tomato plants.
From tomato plants, right. And the same, I think, with beliefs. Beliefs don't give birth to unrelated thoughts. They give birth to thoughts of the same kind of thinking, which is what keeps you stuck. Yeah, that's great.
I think also, if not in the text, but certainly the first word of this chapter, the effect, right? It starts with effect of thought on circumstance, right?
Well, that's interesting. Yes, can you turn to the contents page on page 6 and just look at because I think there's a lot more in this than I thought until you mentioned it. And I bet most people don't think about this. The labels he's chosen for as well. Not just the order, which I think the order is very important as well.
I think so too.
But the words.
The words are, and remember, we're talking about James Allen, in a time in human history where most men are earning their living through working with their hands. The first chapter is thought and character, and then the next is effect of thought on circumstance, and then the effect of thought on health and body. And then we go to thought and purpose, and then the thought factor in achievement, vision, and ideals. So this word effect, as it's used here, I think shows for us our causative ability.
Yeah.
To
create the inner garment of character and the outer garment of
right.
Yeah.
And it's just, again, for me, when I was first studying this idea that I could affect circumstance was something new to me.
Right.
I think there's a real good summary of this. As you said, this is the longest chapter, and we could do this in a 3 or 4 part. But it's on page 36. If we go to line 104, and he says, "Thought and character are one."
Right.
Thought and character are one. And as character can only manifest and discover itself through environment and circumstance, the outer conditions of a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state. And remember, we were talking when a couple of days ago when we were working with the levels of character, and we talked about how these higher levels, they become states, right? So he says a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state. This does not mean that a man's circumstances at any given time are an indication of his entire character.
Right.
But that those circumstances are so intimately connected with some vital thought element within himself that, for the time being, they are indispensable to his development.
Yeah.
And I think that gives us hope.
Yeah.
That if we've made a mistake, if we've kind of fallen off course, if we've gone off path, that sometimes when we make a mistake or we have a failure, we think of that's it. We've blown our whole life. It's all over. That's
catastrophic.
Catastrophic.
But the wisdom comes from those events, doesn't it? Good judgment comes from bad decisions and learning from them.
Isn't that interesting how it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, you talked about your, what was it? You looked out the window one day and saw a team of people in SWAT vests coming through the door. Oh no, Treasury.
Yeah, when I had been embezzled, and all of a sudden they were serving a search warrant, search warrant on my house. I hear pounding on the door, and I look out, and there's guys in flak jackets, and here they come, and and at that moment in time, it was one of the most devastating things to happen to me. I had an accountant. One of my closest friend's father had embezzled from me, and so he'd been stealing my taxes, and at that time it was the worst thing that could happen. I thought it was all over. That was it.
Disaster.
And it ended up being one of the best things that could have ever happened to me, because it forced me to really understand my business, to understand a profit and loss statement, what accounts receivable are, general ledger. Help me make different business decisions financially. And so, truly our circumstances can be great teachers for us. And we also create those circumstances, because I did
circumstances we need.
You bet. I created those. I created the circumstances for myself to be embezzled. I made every single decision in order for that to happen.
Right. But it's nice that he's kind of given us a somewhat of an out. This does not mean that a man's circumstances at any given time are an indication of his entire character. No.
Right.
So maybe it's just one little bit we're working on here.
That's right.
It doesn't mean you're a complete mess up, but
That's right.
There's something here that needs work.
Right. And I think it's also one of the reasons why we want to look at the 5 areas of our life, right?
Yeah.
Because we are more than just our work, and we are more than just our relationships, and we are more than just our relationship with God.
Or our physical body,
or any
our
of
work.
that. Right.
Yeah. And he's saying here that they're indispensable to his development. So you can't move forward in this particular part of this particular area without
you can't separate that.
Yeah,
right? You can't separate them from each other. Yeah.
I'm trying to bring in the Jesus is by their fruits you'll know them here, because he's saying thought and character are one. Thought and character are one. So the two are kind of go together. And as character can only manifest and discover it itself
through environment.
Yeah. So it's kind of like you only really know yourself or see aspects of your character when you see the circumstances he's producing, I guess, is what it's saying.
Sure.
So by the fruits you're producing, you can know yourself.
Yeah, I mean, there's, when, when they say, characters, how someone behaves when nobody's looking, right?
Right. Yeah.
And,
patience is something that parents have when no one's watching.
That's yeah.
When people are watching.
When people are watching. But I think certainly there as you grow. I know for me financially, as I've grown financially, there's been more opportunities for me to do shady deals or to take advantage of people,
right.
or to cheat on taxes or to manipulate things. And
who's gonna know?
Who's gonna know? And then it's easy if you're not on top of your character to feel entitled, maybe even to say,
right.
well, I paid my dues, or
I choose to see it this way.
Yeah, exactly right. And so here's what he's saying is, character can only manifest and discover itself through environment. It's through the conditions and circumstances of our life that we really do tune into who we really are and really have ourselves tested, right?
And character can only manifest and discover itself. And I want to add in there, grow or develop itself through circumstance as well. Or is that what he means by manifest? Manifest and discover itself. And then he says a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state.
Isn't that true? I mean, I think this is where the false self steps in. This is where people try to hide, but we have a saying, you can spot a phony a mile away, right?
Right.
It will show up sooner or later, right?
Right.
Your character will reveal itself, right?
Yeah.
And it's only a matter of time.
Right.
And so
let's go over the page to 113. Every man is where he is by the law of his being.
Okay, yeah. Every man is where he is by the law of his being. The thoughts which he has built into his character have brought him there. And in the arrangement of his life, there is no element of chance, but all is a result of law which cannot err. This is just as true of those who feel out of harmony with their surroundings as those who are who are contented with them. And this idea that every man is where he is by the law of his being, and
no element of chance.
There's no element of chance, and there are 7 laws that govern the way that we think, behave, and manifest. Certainly, I think as it relates to this particular line, he's talking about here really the law of vibration. The law of vibration tells us that everything in the universe has a calibrated frequency of vibration, that there's no such thing as inertia. There's no such thing as standing still. Everything's in this constant state of movement, from the smallest electron to the grossest form of matter. And so our thoughts, our energy, and they have a vibrational frequency, and we broadcast that vibrational frequency out. the intuition of another human being, the intuitive factor, can pick up those vibrations. And you know this. You've probably walked into a room or into a restaurant or into a business meeting or something like that, and you pick up on the vibration of just kind of the group, or maybe you meet somebody for the first time and intuitively you register their vibration, and maybe it's a negative vibration. You say, you know what, I just didn't get a good vibe from that person, or there's been times where you're in a new city, and I travel a lot. I'll go to a new city, and I'll open the door to a restaurant, walk in, and take one step in, and just say, nah, it just doesn't. Just doesn't feel right, and that just doesn't have the right. I don't know what it is, just the right vibe. Just intuitively, I'm picking up the vibrational frequency of that. We've all probably experienced where you're thinking of someone, and the phone rings, and this is your ability to tap into and tune into the frequency of another person. So your thoughts, the thoughts that you have a calibrated frequency, and that dominating thought you are constantly broadcasting. And for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. You're causative, so by vibrating out this vibration. And again, this is where he's made it so clear so many times up until now in the book that it's what's really going on inside, what you secretly harbor, not what you tell people, but the vibrational frequency that you really hold. I mean, there's times where you ask somebody, hey, how's it going? And they'll say, everything's going okay. And it's not okay.
Fine.
Yeah, fine. And it's not fine. The dog kind of gets up and leaves the room. The dog knows things aren't fine, And so there's an ability for us to tune into this. And he's saying, every man is where he is by the law of his being, meaning, by this law of vibration, you are going to create in accordance to the dominating thought that you have, the dominating thinking. And he's saying that thinking is character. He's saying your character and your thought are one.
Yeah.
So that character of who you really are, as a human being, not a human doing, as a human being, that's really what you're going to bring forward. And the thoughts which he has built into his character have brought him where he is. In the arrangement of his life, there is no element of chance, but always the result of law which cannot err, because it's a law. And this is just as true of those who feel out of harmony, where things don't feel fair and this isn't right, or something's not right with their surroundings, as those who feel contented with them.
I think
when we don't, both ways.
When we don't like the circumstances, we think this is happening to me. It's
That's
nothing
right.
to do with me. And when we do, it's like, oh, look what I did. Clever me.
Yeah, look at me. Look what I've created. Exactly right.
But no matter what, that's great. What about read on? Like this is really juicy. 119.
Yeah, as the progressive and evolving being, man is where he is that he may learn and grow.
That's tough to take, isn't it?
That is tough to take, especially when you find yourself in struggle and and I think really this begs to bring in faith, right? Because we don't understand.
Need a bigger context for it all to make sense, to seem fair.
I think so. And as he learns the spiritual lesson, we just talked about faith, and as he learns the spiritual lesson which any circumstance contains for him, it passes away and gives place to other circumstances. So, it's interesting that even though we are experiencing life kind of on the physical plane, and we have lessons of financially, and we have lessons in our physical relationships, and we have, lessons and experiences of our physical body, he's saying that there's a spiritual lesson in all of that.
Right.
That there's a spirit, that there's a higher purpose, there's a higher knowing, right? So, this is the idea that we've talked about, previously, where we're simultaneously living on three planes of existence. We're spiritual beings. We've been gifted with an intellect, and we live in a physical body. And everything that we experience, kind of in our physical body, everything we see, in our physical world at one time was in the spiritual realm. Before there was this table, it was first created in the mind of God, and then the idea was birthed into an idea into the form of an idea into the mind of man, and then that idea moved into physical form, or somebody had the idea and they reject the idea and they don't take any action on it, and somebody else
see it on telly and it's like, that was my idea.
That was my idea. Somebody else took it.
Yeah.
But everything we see in our physical world is created twice. And first in the mind of an individual. And so he's saying here, as the progressive and evolving being, man is where he is so that he may learn and grow. I mean, that's the purpose. And we talked about this probably on day 3. We said that the content of our life, this is what's showing up in our life. The content of our life is the curriculum through which we evolve. It's the stuff that we learn. And like we know that when we're in third grade math, and we know that we're gonna learn multiplication. We know that if we don't learn that curriculum, then we don't evolve. We don't get advanced to the 4th grade. We repeat the 3rd grade again.
Right.
And the same is true for our life. As progressive and evolving beings, if we don't learn the lesson from whatever the circumstance has come to teach us, if we won't grow, if we'll hide or be a quitter, if we operate from some of those lower levels that we talked about, look back on page 24. If you're operating on these lower levels, how do you ever harvest the good of whatever those circumstances are? Go to page 24. And how does the runaway, the quitter, the worrier, the superiorist, how do we learn the spiritual essence from those lower levels of awareness? We don't. And so it's no wonder that we remain bound, we remain stuck in those same circumstances, in those same conditions. Again, happen again and again and again and again. And it really does feel like it's happening to us, never realizing that we are causative. That, what's the title of the chapter? The effect of thought on circumstance, and that we can affect the circumstance. And how can we affect the circumstances? That we can harvest the good from this. We can learn the spiritual lessons. We can learn the higher lessons for us. In each and every situation, we can harvest the good, and that
never ends, does it? As progressive and evolving being, always there's going to be more challenges, and the reward you get for solving a problem is a bigger problem with more growth attached to it. And as you solve that, another bigger problem. And we've been talking about this being a business book. Most immature entrepreneurs are looking for things to go perfectly and smooth and not to have any problems. For me, it's good when I can find problems in the marketplace. I know the bigger the problems, the bigger the opportunities are. Right.
Because at the end of the day, the sale of everything is the solution to someone's problem, somebody's need or want.
And if it was easy, lots of people could do it, and it would be valued much less.
That's right.
You want the tough-to-solve problems that are high value.
Yeah, you want to be the problem solver. You want to be able to do that. And so, the more willing you are to participate, to grow, to challenge yourself, to take control, right, and truly be the causative force, the better it is for you.
Yeah, complaining customer is a great insight into how you can move your business forward, isn't it? You get so much from angry customers, complaining customers, the ones who just don't say anything and go somewhere else.
Well, the complaining customer, like when I was in my cleaning business, challenged us to get better.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one thing. Certainly they challenged us to get better. Second off is a complaining customer gave us an opportunity to be able to really earn and turn them into a really loyal customer.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm speaking from the cleaning business, but people expected the cleaning company is eventually going to kind of screw up, and no big surprise. They're gonna skip a couple of trash cans, or they're not going to do a great job one night. Sometimes that happens, and people expect that. But how that company fixes that problem and how they respond and how they resolve that issue really matters.
Right.
And if you can take that complaint and you can go in and really serve that client and show them that you're taking it seriously,
Yeah.
living out the character of taking responsibility,
Yeah.
not blaming someone else.
That's an opportunity to get in front of them when they're listening and paying attention and show them what you're really made of.
Absolutely. And say, oh, by the way, if we could clean the carpets, or we could do this or this or this, that could also make this look better, right? We could do that as well.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to line 137. I love this. This is an egg scrambler.
Oh yeah, the soul. Yep, the soul attracts that which it secretly harbors. And again, this is what we're talking about. The dominating vibration that you're in, right? It's not what you claim. It's not what you tell people. That which it loves, also that which it fears.
Yeah, that's good. Isn't it?
This idea that we can have. For me, I spent so much of my time thinking that, faith was this wonderful attribute. Well, it is when you have faith in
What you want.
in positive things.
Yeah.
Not so much when you have faith in your doubts.
Yeah.
And I had lots of faith in my doubts. I had lots of faith in my judgments. I had lots of faith in, of my shortcomings. I had lots of faith in scarcity. So, so he says here, the soul attracts that which it secretly harbors, that which it loves and that which it fears. It reaches the height of its cherished aspirations, and it falls to the level of the unchastened desires, and circumstances are the means by which the soul receives its own.
That's so powerful.
That is really powerful.
I love this, which it secretly harbors, that which it loves and also that which it fears. So the thing you love is yours, isn't it? The thing you hate is yours, because if what we hold in mind tends to manifest, what we dwell on tends to manifest. If it's thinking as a man thinketh, if we're holding in mind the things that we love, then they're going to manifest, or there's a high likelihood they're going to manifest. So we hold in mind the things that we hate or the things that we fear intensely, then they probably are as well. So if you think about that for different aspects of your life, like health, for example, do you love being healthy or do you hate being fat? Do you hate being poor or do you love being prosperous? Yeah. And where you're looking at the same thing, you think, but where is your focus and where is the intensity? And it's the thing you love, or is it the thing you hate?
Yeah, and which is the higher vibration? When we were looking at the chart of the 7 levels of character, we said that love is the highest frequency.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And so there's a real power in choosing to love.
Yeah.
And it was the famous quote of Mother Teresa when she was asked if she would march would she march against the Vietnam War, and she said no, but if you have a march for peace
rally,
that I'd lead.
Yeah, because it's where you put your focus, isn't it? What's your holding in your conscious mind? Are you turning your back on what you don't want and moving towards what you do want? Or are you trying to back away from what you don't want, but thinking about it all the time and being drawn into it?
Yeah. So good. I mean, there's just so much in this chapter, and of course, in this chapter, he begins to talk about the soul. If you go to line 158, he says, "A man does not come to the alms house or the jail by the tyranny of fate or circumstance, but by the pathway of groveling thoughts and base desires. Nor does a pure-minded man fall suddenly into crime by stress of mere, external force. The criminal thought had long been secretly fostered in the heart, and the hour of opportunity revealed its gathered power. Circumstances does not make the man. It reveals him to himself.
That's great.
No such conditions can exist as descending into vice and its attendant sufferings apart from vicious inclinations, or ascending into virtue and its pure happiness without the continued cultivation of virtuous aspirations. And man, therefore, as the Lord and master of thought, is the maker of himself, the shaper and author of environment. Even at birth, the soul comes to its own. And through every step of its earthly pilgrimage, it attracts those combinations of conditions which reveal itself, which are reflections of its own purity or impurity, its strength and its weakness. Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are.
There's so much in there, isn't there? My goodness.
And I think that really is the chapter on thought on circumstances, is that the circumstances really does reveal ourselves. This is why I think it's so important that as you go through this study with us, that you really take the time to take self-inventory of kind of where you're at, to inventory not only kind of where you're at in the physical world, but where are you at in your thinking life? You know, what are your triggers? What is that inner dialogue? You know, you are having a conversation all the time when you're driving to and from work, when you're riding the subway, when you're on the airplane, whatever it is, when you're in the gym, when you're on the treadmill, when you're working out, when you're taking that run, you are in your head and there's a dialogue.
Right.
You know, and again, we could chalk it up as this kind of mental energy, but every one of those thoughts is a spark, right? It has creative power. And the combination of those, the composite of all of those, begin to create the dominant energy of what we think.
Right. Just where you ended up there, men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are. It's so important. The divinity that shapes, this is down to 178, the divinity that shapes our ends is in ourselves. It is our very self. I think if you take those two lines, men do not attract what they want and that which they are, and go back to line 147, the outer world of circumstance shapes itself to the inner world of thought, and both pleasant and unpleasant external conditions are factors which make for the ultimate good of the individual. As the reaper of his own harvest, man learns from both suffering and bliss. And that's what changes what we are, which is what we need to change to get what we want. So we need both pleasant and unpleasant circumstances, don't we, as part of our growth. And that comes from our life experience. It comes from our circumstances.
I lay before you both a blessing and a curse. And it's really, you know, we get to choose our attitude. We get to choose how we're going to see this.
Yeah.
And what we're going to make from it. You know, what are we going to make from it? And I think that's really powerful. When you look at line 186, he says, in the light of this truth, then, is the meaning of, what's the meaning of fighting against circumstances? It means that man is continual revolting against an effect without, while all the time he's nourishing and preserving its cause in his heart.
Yeah.
That cause may take the form of a conscious vice or an unconscious weakness, but whatever it is, it stubbornly retards the efforts of its possessor and thus calls aloud for a remedy. Men are anxious to improve their circumstances, but unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound.
That kind of sums up the book, doesn't it, in some ways?
It just really does. It just, if you find yourself stuck, if you find yourself bound, and again, we encourage you to kind of look at these 5 areas of your life. Look at these 7 levels of character. Go back and maybe look at these 7 levels of awareness that we talked about from our empowered life lessons, and take inventory. Take the time to go through, this book, and go through the the exercises and questions that we have on each of the chapters. And give yourself the gift of taking the time to kind of write them out. I think the power of writing out your notes of the chapters, writing causes thinking. Right?
Yeah.
It really allows you to focus in and kind of capture where you're at. And the really powerful thing, I think, is a year from now when you go back and listen to this study again, and you hear or you watch the video again, and you read the text and you ask the questions, and then you go to write and you read what you wrote a year ago.
Yeah.
You're
it's
amazed.
A snapshot in time, isn't it? You can see.
Amazed at how far you've grown.
And that's help. We need that, I think, because very often we don't realise, because the growth is so incremental and slow very often, you don't realise how far you've come, do you, until you stop and look back.
Yeah, it's like you were saying on thought and character. It's kind of hard to see it in character, right?
Yeah.
Because it's slow moving.
Yeah.
But it's happening all the time.
Yeah.
In big things and small things, because the universe doesn't register big or small.
Right.
It doesn't register, this is a big idea or a small idea, or this has a big consequence or a small consequence. In the universe, it just is.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Great chapter. So
Wonderful.
Should we wrap that one up there?
Yeah, I think so.
So we'll see you tomorrow for thought and the healthy effect of thought on the body.
Yeah.
For the next chapter.
Yeah,
We'll see you then.
Chapter 3.
Yeah, be well. Bye-bye. God bless.